So tonight we're going to continue the discussion of York Suburban's construction and renovation plans and the impact on taxpayers and what we can still do about it. A little outline for tonight's discussion. The taxpayer impact, we spent quite a bit of time in the first meeting on the taxpayer impact. We looked at the calculator, we looked at the school's calculator, and pointed to some of the mathematical problems in that calculator. Tonight we have some additional information because additional millages have been committed to this project that have still not shown up in the school's calculator. So we'll see that. Then I want to talk a little bit about something called the 10-year outlook and the alternative for the intermediate complex, which is the building that's supposed to replace Indian Rock in East York, to let you see what information has been available to the school board for a little bit more than a year, almost a year. Then I also want to give you some food for thought, some idea about the overarching budget implications of what's going on in the district, and then maybe something to think about relative to why the school district even exists, what business it's in, and how well it's been doing in the last several years. Melanie and Chris Sanders are going to give you some information about what you can do, what these important next steps are, and there will be plenty of time for comments and questions at the end of the presentation. All right, here's the first eye test. What is this? This is a piece of information that came to the school board on March the 13th, 2024, just a couple weeks ago, from PFM, which is a financial advisory firm. And this spells out in clear detail, you can see how clear it is, clear detail what the tax implications really are for the bonds that are going to be necessary to finance the $120 million worth of construction. And understand that that $120 million translates into $260 million of debt service. So that's what we're facing. That's what these taxes have to be able to support. I want to say one more thing, and I mean this, that we need to be able to separate the financing from the benefits. We can have that discussion at some other time, but I think we all need to know, as taxpayers, what the true cost is. Can I have a show of hands of the folks that might agree with that statement? You really want to know what this is going to cost. We can talk benefits all day long, but cost is something that's objective, it's demonstrable, and unless we understand it, we can make decisions that have absolutely no basis in fact. All right, so let's take a look at another representation. This is a blow-up of some information that came from that same document, and you see the red oval. That tells you what the cumulative millage is to support this construction activity through the end, in this case, of the 2031 school year. But it doesn't end there, folks. You can see that it flattens out in 2028 at 5.83 mils, and it stays there forever. The bonds are not serviced until 2054. And the assumption I would make is that this is not all, because there will be other construction projects. That's the fact of the matter. Now, I've taken the liberty of trying to simplify this so you don't have to have an eye test. This is exactly the same information, and it shows that we've had 2 years of phase-in millage at 0.41 that started in the 2022-23 school year. So we paid that, and we are paying another 4.1 this year. If you look to the far right column, it shows you how these accumulate over time. It's not once and done. It's like compounding in your bank account. You make a deposit, then you make the same deposit next year on top of the one that you already made. So by the time we get to the end of the second year of this phase-in, we've paid 3 of these 0.41s, right? Not one of them, not 2, but 3. Now, this is interesting. In the 24-25 school year, the school district decided that it would take a remaining $5 million of an outstanding loan, allocate that to this construction project so they wouldn't need new borrowing to cover the entire $120 million. And that brings with it 2.66 mils that we're already paying. I argue that that's a cost to the taxpayer for this project. That's my premise. I've been told by many, many folks that I'm wrong about that that's not a real cost because we're already paying it. And to me, that's like having the banker say, well, you know, you only have to pay $100 more for your car payment because we've already been collecting $300. Does that make any sense? Of course not. If that's the case, then I'm paying 400, not 100. And that's what that 2.66 represents. It's a reallocation of money that we're currently paying. It is a real cost. As we continue, and the reason I put the little rectangle there is that the 24, 25 through 27, 28 figures, the phase-in millages of 0.59, 59, 59, and 58, those are what's in the school's calculator. How many of you had a chance to look at the school's tax impact calculator? When you go home, please try to find it and do it. Because what you're going to see in that calculator are the 4 millage increases, and that's all. Those accumulate to 2.35 mils, not 5.83. I contend that that's a misrepresentation. That's what I think it is. I'll let you decide for yourselves whether you think that's a misrepresentation. Bottom line is that we need to know what the cost is this year and also in the 2 prior years, what's being brought forward from other bonds, and what we're facing in the future. And to understand that this tax millage trivialization is cumulative. These things add up year after year. The 5.83, we can go right back here. What do you see in that document? 5.83, that's an official York Suburban document. We didn't make this stuff up. So what does that mean? If we just look at a $100,000 assessment, and you could say, well, my assessment's $150,000, so my numbers must be 1.5 times what I see here. Or my assessment's $200,000, so your numbers would be twice what we're going to see here. For a $100,000 assessed value, phasing the mills in the way we just saw them phased in, by the end of the period that's currently shown in the tax calculator, we will have paid on that assessment a total of $2,104 of new taxes. How's that sound? That average is $350 a year. We've been told that the average is only about $40 a year or $50 a year. Math doesn't work this way, folks. This is objective stuff. And this is what aggravates me as a citizen and as a former board member, talking over and over again about trivializing tax increases. They are cumulative. They don't go away. And as we go further down the line, all the way to 2054, because that's how long these payments continue, that 5.83 mils goes on forever. The second yellow stripe shows an accumulation of $5,602, and the average now increases to $467. Now, we may say, well, that's 10 years from now. The other one, that's 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Why should I worry? Well, believe it or not, folks, it's not just us who pay the taxes. It's our houses that pay the taxes. Whether you live there or not, that house is going to be a source of income for the school district. And whether you pay it or the folks that buy the house from you pay it, there it is. It's real. It doesn't go away just because somebody comes and buys it. It just continues on and on and on. If that doesn't have some kind of a detrimental impact on our real estate values, nothing does. It absolutely does. All right, let's switch gears for a second, and I'm going to talk a little bit about something called the 10-year outlook. This was an analysis that was done by Crabtree, Rohrbaugh and Associates, which is the architect for the school district, the same one that's doing all the design work for the new construction. And they were commissioned to do a comprehensive review of the school district to see what kind of capital improvements and maintenance needed to be done during the next 10 years to keep the district functioning as it is today. So we're going to focus on those things that deal with the replacement of Indian Rock and East York and create this thing called the Intermediate Center. The 10-year outlook, and I'll give you some detail on that in just a second, funds maintenance and capital upgrades. It's rolled out over a 10-year period. And for these two buildings, the cumulative cost was between $15.9 and $19.3 million. A lot of money. The proposed Intermediate Center, which replaces these two buildings, currently has an estimated cost of $43.5 to $44.7 million. So as a value proposition, I'm simply asking you to think about whether there's a rationale to spend $25 million more to get a consolidated school with all the bells and whistles, or to maintain the current footprint and the current education plan with necessary upgrades. That's the question. That's the value proposition. Here's some of the detail. These are broken down into architectural and mechanical kinds of upgrades. This is a list of the architectural upgrades that were in that document, the very first of which is gymnasium/classroom addition. Now, whether that's necessary or not, that's not just going out and repainting the building. That's not doing incidental crack repair and fixing a couple of faucets. There's some major capital investment included in that investment. And you can see the rest. I don't think it makes sense for me to stand and read this to you, but I'll give you a couple seconds to ponder that. So this is East York, and I look at that and think, well, that really, the building's not in that bad a shape with a list like that. You know, you would think it might be 150 or 200 items if you're thinking about bulldozing the place. This is the next phase of it. These are the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades. I'll let you take a look at that. Now, the difference between doing the 10-year outlook versus replacing the building is the way to prioritize, the way to do budgeting, and the way to time phase the improvements. They don't all have to be done at once. Whereas if you say, well, no, I'm going to build a building, that's a kind of a once and done deal. So from a financial perspective, this spreads the cost. Similar kind of analysis at Indian Rock. Again, starting with gymnasium and classroom additions, not insignificant, and several other other significant upgrades to that school to keep it in good nick, as our British friends would say. And it's mechanical and electrical and plumbing upgrades there as well. And as I look at this thing, as a former member of the Property and Finance Committee, I can tell you that I had never heard anything about serious problems at either of these schools. There have been problems, absolutely. These are old schools and systems fail. But when they fail, they're fixed. In some cases, I'm going to tell you that, at least from my perspective, a lot of what might have taken place in the last 2 or 3 years was either not done or delayed pending the decision to build this new intermediate school. It really wouldn't make a lot of sense to spend $500,000 or $600,000 on an HVAC upgrade on a building that you were about to abandon. So in that regard, there's a little bit of a back and forth on, let's say, neglecting the buildings. A lot of that was done consciously because we were considering seriously knocking these things down. There was no discussion, no definitive discussion until lately, very, very recently, about holding on to Indian Rock and repurposing that building. Now, just think about that. If it's going to be repurposed, and we've heard a couple times that it's actually a turnkey building, that an alternative use of that building, it's ready to rock and roll right now today. Well, if that's the case, who's going to take care of all this stuff? If York Suburban is going to be a responsible landlord, then it's still going to have to do these improvements over that 10-year period of time to maintain that building. Okay, moving right along, I want to leave with some food for thought. This is high level. This is what we're about to face. Taking information from the information packet that was handed out at the very last Property and Finance Committee meeting, we can see that the projected budget for next year moves us from $70 million to $83 million in expenses during the next 5 years. That's the total budget. That includes all operations, all debt service. So ostensibly, and I shouldn't say ostensibly, it factors in these numbers that we talked about earlier. Those are included in that. In that same document, you will see deficits, annual deficits, increasing from $1.4 million this year to $8.9 million 5 years from now. That will completely exhaust the district's fund balance. Now, I will tell you that that can't happen. School boards have to balance their budgets. And it could turn out that the $1.4 million that's in the budget this year will go away because there was about $1 million more of state money than what was anticipated. There have been some reductions. That deficit will be cured. As we go forward, however, this increase from 70.5 to 83 million on the top line expenses was accomplished, and this, with these deficits, was accomplished with the assumption of maximum tax increases through the entire horizon of that budget projection, starting with 6.4% in the upcoming year. That's the maximum allowed by law for our district. So looking at that from the standpoint of the financial challenges that the school board faces, let me leave you with this one. I would like to ask you all, what business are we in? What is the business of a school district? It's education. And we like to measure academic performance. Most of us are interested in how well our kids are doing. We don't have access to their report cards, but we do have access to the information that the state publishes relating to the standardized tests that kids take every year. In the 10 years ending in 2023, which is the last year that these tests were conducted and published, we'll get the 24 results in several months, our taxes have increased from 20.7 mils to 25.1 mils. That's a 21% increase. Looking at 8th grade math proficiency, our math proficiency meaning performing on grade level or above, has decreased from 87% to 39.3. That means, and I'm going to ask you this question right now, the population of 8th graders scoring 39.3% proficient, where are they now? Does anybody know? They're in 9th grade. I don't mean to be snarky, but they're moving them right along. These are kids that are not performing at grade level, and yet we just keep moving them right along. At one of our future meetings, we can dig much deeper into this, and I can show you that the trend has been going on like this for years. And what's being proposed, I guess, to fix it is new buildings. I contend that that will have very little impact on these test scores. That's just my speculation at this point. English language arts, from 91 to 69.4, that's a 24% reduction. Science, 81 to 70, that's a 13.5-point reduction. At the high school level, we administer things called keystone exams, which are end-of-course exams. Student can take algebra in 8th or 9th grade, and then they take the keystone. Those results are down only 11.5%. Literature down 11.8, biology down 5.4. The only black number on this chart is the increase in taxes. And we're proposing $120 million for buildings. We're not proposing $120,000 or 1.2 million to do something about the academic program. We're talking about $120 million for buildings, which grows into $260 million worth of payments. What do you think? What would you choose? If you're sitting on the school board and you're looking at these numbers, what do you choose? Do you choose new buildings, or do you start hammering the academic program?